Now I'd like to welcome Ron Haar, our panel moderator, and the panelists for the session. If you would join us, make their way to the stage. Great. Ron Haar is the president and CEO of the Chattanooga Chamber. Prior to leading our chamber, he was an executive with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee and held executive and management positions at Bell South, Bunton, AT&T, and LeVitch and Associates Advertising. You know, I had the good fortune of meeting Ron when he was a member of the Blue Cross team. His enthusiasm and his passion for Chattanooga was palpable. I've gotten to know him over the years, and he's a good friend as well. To each of you, you should know that he's also been a great leader over these years on important issues affecting this community, and he's a strong advocate for fostering partnerships, creating relationships, and understanding the impact of business on this community. Now, Ron, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me make sure the microphone is on. If not, I'll yell really, really loudly. But I am so happy that this event is occurring in Chattanooga, and we're very, very proud to have you with us today. Those of you that don't live here have the privilege of living here every day. As my Appalachian grandmother used to say, our purpose today is to put 50 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag. I have 4 great business leaders with me today, and for the next 55 minutes, according to my watch, to get you out on time, we want to talk about some exciting things that have happened and that are going to happen in Chattanooga. We've had a great warm-up to that with Mitch and with Congressman Fleischman and Wade's talk about Chattanooga, and y'all have hopefully had some time to enjoy our city. And I hope that you will give us a little bit, pardon our provincial pride, about what you're going to hear for the next hour, because our assignment was to brag to you about what we've accomplished in Chattanooga. So we're not usually quite this braggadocious, are we? Maybe we are. But we're very proud of what we've accomplished, and I have 4 experts here that are going to share with you. Format today is we're going to allow each of our guests to give a 3 to 5 minute introduction about their business, what they're working on, and then we're going to try to engage in a conversation among these panelists about some of the themes that are common threads between their businesses and their opportunities that they are creating. I want to start by introducing Max Fuller, who's the president and CEO of U.S. Express. Max leads one of the largest trucking companies in America, I think second by the current rankings. I can't keep up, but we are very, very proud. And I hope all of you understand that Chattanooga is a center of logistics and has been since it was founded in 1838. The reason that we're here, that Chattanooga is here, is it was the closest point between the Tennessee River and the Port of Savannah to get goods to Europe. And that has continued throughout history, and today we're the #1 freight throughput location in the country. But as Max always points out to me, only 1% of his business is in Chattanooga. He has a nationwide trucking firm that brings great power and energy to Chattanooga, now over 10,000 employees, I believe, and we're very, very proud of what you and your associates have accomplished at U.S. Express. Secondly, we have Tiffany Robinson, who's the director of Waypaver. That's like paving your way, if you can't see it in your program. And it's an innovation lab within the Lamppost Group. You've heard that alluded to a couple times today. They are dedicated to driving economic development by recruiting top-tier talent in tech and design to Chattanooga. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about that as we get going. And third, I have Mike Bradshaw from the Company Lab. It's a mentorship-driven startup accelerator, which also runs the Gig Tank, that I know everyone in this room has heard about, which is a summer business accelerator focused on developing next-generation applications for gig-speed fiber optic networks like Chattanoogans. And then, last but not least, we have Dr. Tom Devlin, who's the co-director of the Southeastern Stroke Center at Erlanger. It's really appropriate that he would be here bringing in another important sector of our economy. He and his associates are saving lives by trying to treat strokes and prevent strokes right here in the buckle of the stroke belt. And there's some great technology that he's going to share with you today. So at this time, I'd like to call on Max Fuller to kick us off and give us an overview about your company and its relationship to
Okay, thanks, Ron. We started U.S. Express in 1986 with the vision of bringing technology to the transportation industry. In 1986, you would pick up a load maybe going from here to Southern California, and its average time might take 3 weeks to get there. U.S. Express applied technology. We were able to bring that down to about a week. One thing that we did early on was to apply technology to come up with unique solutions. And with the computerization to do optimizations, to look at truck and load, to help develop satellite communications. We're one of the first people in the country to apply satellite communications. A lot of the code, a lot of the workflow processes we designed here at U.S. Express in Chattanooga. And a lot of people wonder, Chattanooga is not known as being the most technological place on the planet, but we have a lot of brilliant people here that can rise to the occasion. Sometimes you just really need someone that has a sense of direction and how to apply that technology and go find the people that know how to do it. We found those people here in Chattanooga, and some of the companies that we were able to put on top of the map with satellite communications in our industry were based in places like San Diego and Phoenix. So we became a game changer not only for them, but also for the transportation industry. Our goal was to redefine the industry. Today we are just slightly below $2 billion in annual sales. We have locations throughout almost all of North America. We have 300, almost 400 trucks based in the country of Mexico full-time, and about 9,200 trucks based throughout the United States within 6 operating companies. And yes, Ron, we have about 11,000 employees. We're in a growth mode at this point to add close to another 1,000 that will be scattered across the country. We are the people that move products. Probably everyone in this room has something that we've moved to get it to your house. We deal with companies like Target and Walmart and Procter & Gamble, and I can give you kind of the who's who's list of corporate America, and they are customers of U.S. Express. But building a company in Chattanooga has been pretty unique. I was one of the few people that didn't leave Chattanooga in the 70s, even though I thought I should. In the early 70s, we thought somebody needed to turn the light out, the last guy out. And for some reason, we decided to start U.S. Express here, and it turned out to be a great story because Chattanooga was going through its great revival, and Chattanooga had bankers that wanted to support local businesses. And that's part of the reason that U.S. Express really got to the level it got to. We've been the fastest growing truckload company to get to our size in history. And part of that's being done partially through technology, but also with all the tremendous support that we've had from the city that we call home, and also the state. The state of Tennessee has done some tremendous pluses for us. At the same time, we brought technology to our industry. Part of our goal was to be a game changer. We became a game changer in our industry. We brought technology in from Europe, asked our manufacturers to apply those technologies to our trucks. Today we have the most technological trucks on the highway. We have the greenest trucks on the highway. We're one of the very few companies in the country that has collision avoidance on all of our trucks. That's the type of company that we built here in Chattanooga with Chattanooga talent.
Max, that's a great opening. We're going to come back to you in a minute and let you talk about a couple of surprises you have about other technology that you've entered into because of what you learned in your trucking company. But we're really proud of what you've accomplished, and thanks for being a part of this panel today. So Tiffany, I'm going to turn to you next, if you don't mind, and explain Waypaver. And Tiffany's had a short but impactful background here in Chattanooga. She was with our River City company and knows this city well and is working on some exciting things. So I'll let you take over.
So as Ron said, Waypaver is an innovation lab based out of the Lamppost Group. And before I dive into what Waypaver is, I'll tell you about Lamppost Group. Lamppost Group is a venture capital firm based here in Chattanooga who incubates companies. So you've probably heard of venture capitalists writing startups a check. And whenever I say startups, I'm talking about small technology companies. But instead of just writing a check and becoming hands-off, Lamppost focuses on how do we mentor those companies and how do we help grow them and help give them the resources that they need to be successful. Another big piece of why Lamppost is doing what it's doing here in Chattanooga is because it really believes in our community and believes that Chattanooga has the ability to be the best mid-sized city in the country. So when I was at River City Company, for the last 3 years I was the director of creative strategies, I kept running into a problem, and that was how do we get our young, creative, and technology talent to stay here? They may start here, but then they're quickly leaving. So I was asked to start thinking about the talent issue that we have in Chattanooga, and how do we get the best and brightest to stay here and to plant their roots in Chattanooga? And so we created Waypaver. So based out of Lamppost Group, what we're doing is we're actually test running how can a mid-sized city keep the best and brightest talent here. So we have about 15 portfolio companies that we're working with, and we are doing everything from recruiting, going actually out into the world and finding the best and brightest talent and placing them in jobs with our portfolio companies, to running experiments in order to figure out how does a mid-sized city curate talent. So when I say running experiments and curating, I mean, how do we take the people that are already here and keep them here? How do we teach them perhaps a new skill set, or how do we help them shift their thinking and roll into the jobs that are here that are available right now? So we're doing a few things at the moment. We're getting ready to start the launching of a hack school for women. Women are a major minority in the technology field, but we have many women here who are interested in learning how to become technologists. They're learning how to become programmers, developers, how do they become more engaged in the startup community. And so we've teamed up with an organization called Code XX, which is a group of women who literally get together on Monday nights at our local library, and they teach themselves to code. And we're providing resources, and we're working with them to start a school for women locally that want to become technologists. And what Waypaver will do is place them into jobs actually after they've learned the skill set that they need to actually have a higher paying job. Another way of recruitment locally is we're working directly with UTC and our other local universities to find junior developers and place them side by side with senior developers within our portfolio companies. The senior developer works with the junior developer side by side for about 12 weeks, 40 hours a week, and the junior developer's skill set rises to the point of where they are now at the skill set level of which that company needs for a new hire. So we're exploring a lot of different ways of how can our community start either finding the best and brightest, or start taking the people that we have here and merging them into the talent needs that we currently have with our companies. So.
Tiffany, thank you. And I know you're saving some surprises, too, about some other things we want to hear from. So
Okay.
We'll look forward to getting back to you on
Sounds
that. Next, I want to introduce you Mike Bradshaw. There's not a person in Chattanooga that's in the downtown area that hasn't heard of the company lab, but there are not many people who can explain it. And he's going to help us with that today. I have been using the term for a year or two, calling it a tech incubator, and I like what he was, when we started working on this panel, he's been using the term accelerator. And I think that's a much better way of explaining what they do, but I'll stop trying to let you do it, Mike. Thanks and welcome.
Thank you, Ron. I'm the executive director of CoLab. We think of ourselves as the front door for entrepreneurship in Chattanooga. We serve that function by holding a series of programs and events throughout the year that brings people interested in the startup community together. We find that maximizing collisions among these highly innovative thinkers really helps get the job done. It's two of those programs that we run. Of those two, you've probably heard of Gig Tank. It's mentioned a couple times. I'm going to take a moment to talk about Co-Starters a little bit. This is a program that we've run for 3 years here now. It's been responsible, has touched the creation of 2,000 jobs here in town, very quietly, 2 or 3 jobs at a time. It's a program that uses peer-based learning, bring together aspiring entrepreneurs to help them launch their business, a very practical, hands-on, intensive 9-week course. We've had close to 800 graduates, which we've figured there's 2,000 full-time equivalent jobs that have come out of that. Kind of in the spirit that informs the Tennessee Valley Corridor itself, we've begun to radiate out. Now we've just established working in partnership with the Rocket Hatchery in Huntsville, Alabama, Co-Starters program there. We've gone into 17 different cities around the country, spreading the Chattanooga brand through this program now, and it's growing rapidly. It's an untold story, very low level, very quiet, gets the job done. We host a couple of programs you may have heard about. Love to see at Will This Float every year, 48-hour launch, where we had just a marvelous exit this year. A company came in with the back of an envelope idea 3 years ago. They just exited for $11.5 million. That's pretty good. So we are indeed a tech accelerator. These are 3-month-long programs that we also run. We run these all year long. But our biggest one, the crown jewel, is Gig Tank. This year's Gig Tank, we said, let's take a look at the assets that define Chattanooga. Of course, we've got the ultra-high-speed, low-latency network, the gigabit network, and our rebranding as the Gig City. That's a great asset. What about the core competencies that surround that can be used, that can use that network? And so we said, well, you know something? We're the Dynamo of Dixie, dirtiest city in America, reinvented as the scenic city, the Gig City. Okay, well, what about connecting our manufacturing legacy to a future where manufacturing is enabled by ultra-high-speed networks? And I think you probably all heard about 3D printing. We call it additive manufacturing. We said, let's concentrate on this year. And let's also look at our healthcare ecosystem here, which is extraordinary in this town, one of our core competencies. And maybe those two things match up. And sure enough, we went out and we recruited around the country. We got a huge amount of support. The largest 3D printing companies in America, Stratasys and 3D Systems, have both made substantial gifts to the program for our use this year. Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the manufacturing demonstration facility opened up their doors to our entrepreneurs. Some enormous support. The University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, my alma mater, gave us 40 dormitory beds. This is the 3rd year that they've done this. We couldn't run the program without them, and also opened up their Fab Lab to us. So it's amazing support from the community has allowed us to punch way above our weight and to accomplish some really great things. So this year, we have 11 teams, up from 7 last year and the year before. 11 teams here visiting from all over the country, finding out what a great place Chattanooga is. But we also did something in the spirit of the TVC. We made an intentional recruitment effort in Huntsville, in Knoxville, right up in the Rhone Valley. We even slipped on over into Georgia. Got a Georgia Tech team too, why not, right? So we've got these folks here for the summer working with us. We're going to have our demo day on July 29th. I hope we can get you all there.
Mike, thank you. And we're really proud of everything you're doing, and I always enjoy hearing your enthusiasm for it. You know, it's no surprise that we think about technology when it comes to healthcare and medicine. But I think it might be a surprise what our next panelist is going to share with you about what's available here in Chattanooga as it relates to strokes and cardiovascular disease. So Dr. Tom Devlin, I'll let you bring up the rear and 4th place and tell us about what you're working on at Erlanger.
Sounds great. Thanks very much for letting me come and chat with you. What I'm going to talk to you about today, just very briefly, is very much in keeping with what you've already heard. It's really, it's kind of a miracle story in a way, and it's really about a can-do spirit that Chattanooga definitely has. And really the best representation of that in a microcosm is I just walked out of a patient's room about 30 minutes ago. This is a young guy. He's about 10 years younger than I am, and he had a big stroke 2 nights ago. And yes, he got TPA, which is the only approved treatment for stroke. But in addition, we just infused him. He's getting the infusion right now of 150 milliliters of stem cells. And these are stem cells that are derived from the cord blood of babies when they're born. These are babies that are completely healthy and go on to live a normal life. But we can take a little sample of their blood, or we can take a little piece of human placenta. And those cells are very special because we can make those cells into any cell in your body. And we partner at Erlanger with companies from around the world. And in this company, a company called Athersys, makes those cells from this child into brain cells. And what are we doing right now as I'm sitting here? We're infusing those brain cells into our young patient's body intravenously. And what do those cells do? Well, those cells circulate in this young man's blood. It's going to happen this afternoon. And those cells release a number of different proteins. And those proteins get directly into the brain. They cross right over into the brain, right in the area of the brain where the patient has a stroke. And they do three things. They grow new blood vessels, they decrease inflammation, which can further make the stroke worse, and they create new synaptic connections between the brain cells that are remaining. It is the most advanced high technology for stroke on a biologic level that's available. Erlanger is deeply ensconced in what's called the stroke belt of the United States. In this area of the country, we have the highest incidence of stroke anywhere else in the United States. And stroke is a gigantic problem. It's the second leading cause of death in the world for medical reasons, and it's the #1 reason why someone's in a nursing home in the United States, the very #1 reason. I'll tell you, we see people at Erlanger at all age come in all hours of the day and night. Half of my patients are considerably younger than I am. Erlanger, over the last 20 years, has emerged to be what appears to be the largest stroke center in the United States. We take care of, last year we take care of 2,200 stroke patients. We're twice as large as Vanderbilt, a little bit more than twice as large as Vanderbilt. And that's given us a tremendous opportunity. The opportunity that it's given us is to be able to partner with the best companies, the smartest people from around the world, to be a test bed of new medical innovative solutions to take care of stroke. We are very, very focused on stroke. Where was I 4 nights ago? 4 nights ago, I'm surgically implanting an electric device, small electrode, in the palate of a young patient having a stroke. And what does that electrode do as we implant it? It goes up and it stimulates a small nerve bundle, and that nerve bundle goes up to the arteries in the brain, and it dilates up all those arteries, and it creates tremendous collateral flow right around the clot. When I'm doing that in the room in the middle of the night, who else is in the room with me? I have a team of engineers and physicians and scientists from Israel that not only can see what we're doing, but they can control all of the computer equipment that we use to do the implantation. And through telemedicine and our close partnerships with the Israelis and other companies like that, we are able to absolutely move forward these new technologies in a way that really no other center in the United States does on a daily basis. So where are we now? Where we are now is we're in partnership with companies from around the world to be a test bed center where we're taking a medical liability, i.e. stroke, and we're using it to leverage new technologies. We're right at the intersection between basic science right to the clinical bedside, which is where I like to live as both a PhD biologist, and a physician. This is the area that we like. And we put together at Erlanger a tremendous team of physicians and administration under Kevin Spiegel's lead, been very supportive of this. Where we are now is we have companies from around the world that come here. We just had a number of CEOs that we work with from Israel recently come and say, look, Chattanooga is a really special place. We're not getting this sort of interaction in Boston. We're not able to partner with people in California because Erlanger has all the patients, and we've got the infrastructure to do it here. So they've invited us, and we are now currently in discussions to do a symposium, a medical symposium in Tel Aviv in 2015, whereby we bring the whole Chattanooga medical story over to the Israelis. Because what's happening is companies from around the world now are identifying Chattanooga as a low-cost center where they can get into the U.S. market and they can bring their technologies and partner with us here in order to go for FDA funding for these new biologic agents and devices, et cetera. And what they're looking at is not just a team of physicians that's very unique at Erlanger. Keep in mind, we're the only center, we're the only hospital in the United States that has a senior brain doctor that stays in the hospital 24/7, which is one of the things that facilitates great care. But we also have in our armamentarium tremendous technological talent all around Chattanooga. We have UTC, we have Oak Ridge National Laboratory, we have the SIM Center, and we have a business climate that's just ripe for bringing companies like Volkswagen, but these medical device companies from all around the world to set up shop. And just to complete the story, I think probably one of the best examples of how this could be successful is a device that we designed a number of years ago for which we were awarded a patent this year, in January this year. This is a special, very high-tech brain perfusion device to perfuse blood directly into the brain tissue of patients that are having a stroke right then and there. It's a very, very good idea with one of the members of our team. We received a patent for it. This device was picked up by a research and development company, Atlanta, and because of their interest in this device, they've actually set up shop right here in Chattanooga. And they're actually completed the research and development on the device. And who have they partnered with to build it? They're not building it out in California. They're going to build it right here, just right within the Chattanooga region, because we have the technology to do the building here. In fact, the catheter that I will use this afternoon to put in the brain of a patient, that catheter gets built in the Chattanooga region, sent to California to the company that produces it, then it's sent back to us in order to use this in our clinical patients. So,
On one of Max's trucks.
exactly, that's right. So, you know, the story that is emerging out of Chattanooga, a bit of a miracle story, is much aligned with the same stories that you've heard today. It's a combination of technology and this can-do attitude. So we'll, I think that later this summer you'll hear more about the symposium. We appreciate your support. Would like to welcome you, to any of you that would like to come to Chattanooga. We'd love to tell you about a lot more of the technologies that we're developing, but it's really a very amazing story, and it's very much in keeping with the whole concept of the Chattanooga Way.
Great. Thank you very much. That's a hard story to tell in a short period of time, and you did a great job. And I like you a lot, but I'm trying really hard not to be one of your patients. So I hope you're not offended by that. You know, you talked about turning problems into opportunities, and here we have a high incidence of stroke, and that's now become an opportunity from us from a medical study perspective. Another problem, I mean, that's just a real theme that's woven throughout Chattanooga's history. And Max, you've got a story about that, about the drag of a tractor trailer and how much fuel is spent overcoming that drag. I wonder if you could tell us in kind of a short version about the aerodynamic wedges underneath trucks and how all that started here.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of truck and trailers going down the highway, you'll see a wedge that's along the bottom. The Sim Center here at the University of Tennessee some years ago actually did a study with the Department of Energy and U.S. Express to study aerodynamics around a trailer. What they found was that we could improve aerodynamics by somewhere between 12 to 14%. U.S. Express is in the process of deploying those devices even today. If you look at those devices, the information that the Sim Center actually put out was one of the first places that information really came from. And once it's disseminated out into the industry, now you're seeing it on a lot of equipment in this industry. Why is that important to U.S. Express, and why is it important to our industry? Just at U.S. Express alone, it reduces our fuel costs by almost $40 million a year. And it makes us one of the greenest companies in the industry.
$40 million a year in your
Yes.
company alone. Wow, it's amazing. And I always wondered what they were, and you were helping explain that to me the other day, and I really learned from that. So I'm going to let you come back in a minute as one other technology thing that we talked about. But I'd like to jump around some. And Tiffany, I know that you're involved in an exciting new project here focused on women.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So locally, I'm involved in the Jump Fund, which actually Wade was so kind to mention earlier whenever he was talking about why Chattanooga is special. So Chattanooga is the first, has the first all-female angel fund made up of all female investors investing in female entrepreneurs. So a couple years ago, some friends and I were talking about why we're not seeing more women stepping up to the plate when it comes to investing their own money into startups, as well as why we're not seeing more women pitching their companies or their ideas. And what we figured out was actually there is it kind of goes hand in hand, really. Women are definitely behind when it comes to being a part of the entrepreneurial world, but women only make up 12% of angel investors around the entire world. But ironically, women make up 80% of philanthropists around the world. So we put our minds together and we said, we think that we can actually raise a good bit of money here to start investing in female-led companies, and we just closed our fund at $2.5 million. We've actually raised more money between our fund than Oak Ridge and I believe Knoxville have combined for their angel landscape. So our fund has raised more money than those two cities combined, and we raised it from all women, and we're very proud of that because that means that women locally are stepping up and they are investing their money for profit into businesses to then grow businesses here locally. So we've started making strategic partnerships nationally, working with Union Square Ventures, which was one of the first funds to invest in Twitter and Facebook and hundreds of other leading technology companies. And we're getting ready to write our first couple checks actually this month. So we're excited because we're going to be investing in female-led companies, which means that we're going to be growing businesses and growing female leadership. But also we have about 45 limited partners who are all females writing those checks themselves. So we think that, that's a pretty big win for our community.
I'll tell you, you have hit a real nerve in this community. I don't know that I've ever heard anything more talked about. Maybe it's just that happens to be at my house and my wife, but there's a lot of interest in your fund.
Thanks.
And the enthusiasm around doing this by women and for women is very exciting.
Thank you.
Here in Chattanooga.
We actually thought that we would look at bigger cities and we would find, funds just like us in San Francisco, New York, but we haven't found another fund that's made up of all women. So
Great.
yeah.
Well, we'll follow that with a lot of interest. Mike, you mentioned something just briefly because I know you were worried about how I threatened you about time. So I want to, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to come back and tell a little bit more about the Quick Q story. You mentioned an envelope idea that was converted and then recently exited for $12 million. Say a little more about that if you don't mind.
Don't mind at all. 3 years ago at an event that we host annually called 48-Hour Launch, young founder came in and got with the staff that was there producing that event. I was volunteering at CoLab at the time, so I had a nice little front row seat for this. But guy said, well, maybe restaurants need to have a better way of managing their waiting line and keeping their tables filled, right? And Enoch Elwell, the founder of Co-Starters, actually said, Aaron, the young founder that came to him, said, let's draw this thing up on the back of an envelope and then we'll do a quick app. And let me run down the street to the terminal, 100 yards down the road. So let's get it in there. It was a Saturday night, busy, and they tested it out there, just a real rudimentary application. That's where it started. He said, well, maybe this has got some hopes. They won the event, got a few little prizes, a couple $1,000. Well, next thing you know, Aaron's building a team around him. They acquired $3.3 million in investment, building this thing up, acquired some national scale companies, got the attention of some players in that same space, some of the big companies that were in that space, and they were acquired by a publicly traded or a public company called OpenTable for $11.5 million. I think there was another $500,000 in carry on, so for a total of $12 million. So 3 years, from hey, what about this problem, and I think that we could solve it, to acquiring the investment, mostly all local here, and then a great exit.
Well, I just wanted you to tell that story. I think a lot of Chattanoogans are enjoying that and very familiar with OpenTable and to know that that was created here. And I think OpenTable is even hiring and growing and expanding some in Chattanooga as a result.
Yes, it was an inflow into Chattanooga. The acquisition resulted in bringing in new talent and keeping the technical team behind QuickQ here. And then a really interesting thing that happened was, as often happens in an acquisition that's geared towards the technology of the acquired company, some of the business guys behind this that drove the growth said, well, maybe we ought to go out and do it again. That worked pretty well.
Yeah.
So next thing you know, they're back at CoLab. They're hanging out in the accelerator we just completed, designing their new company called ZipFlip, which they're out acquiring investment in right now and apparently having a pretty good roadshow.
So it's like the shampoo bottle. Rinse, lather, and repeat.
Do it again.
Yeah, okay. Tom, I loved hearing your description of what you're doing. There's one piece of it that I would like to expand on a little bit. All of you have mentioned investors and venture capital in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
And I know that for your technology as
Yeah.
well, a lot of that was raised here in Chattanooga, and I thought you might
Absolutely.
like to say a little something about
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. So, the vast majority of ideas that physicians and scientists have that are in the public space don't go anywhere. and it's for a number of reasons. It's because they don't have the business prowess to move the idea forward, and they don't have the money to move it forward. A lot of our funding that came for we have a device called the neuronal protection system. What we do is we go up in the brain and we grab the clot and we pull the clot out, and that's what we do at Erlanger now. We're one of just a handful of centers in the world that do that a lot. And, but in the process of getting the clot out of the brain cells are dying at 1.9 million cells per minute that we're getting the clot out. And a lot of these procedures will take 2-3 hours. So this is a very good idea that we had, and but it's a question of how do we go from a good idea to actually building it and actually bringing it to the market. So we had the support of a number of key people, particularly Dr. David Adair and the Glenveigh Group, that opened up some doors and put us in touch with some of the VC people in town and some of the foundations in town, McClellan Foundation, et cetera. And through the VC people and the contacts that we all had, there was enough startup money to go to a company in Atlanta to make this a realization. And so the direction to make this happen came out of the business community here in Chattanooga, particularly VC money and whatnot, an entrepreneurial spirit. It's just the same way that the aquarium was built, is a bunch of can-do guys that had a vision for what could happen, that had money, supported, reached out to another company outside of town and said, come into Chattanooga, we've got the money, let's build it here in Chattanooga, let's make it happen. So it's really a quintessential Chattanooga success story. And you know, there's so much similarity between a lot of the things that you've been able to accomplish here. And the reason why you guys have been so successful, it's a very unique environment here of
Max,
incubator potential.
Max, would you pick up on that? I know when we talked about this panel, you were passionate about the environment for that here in Chattanooga and how it's helped you.
Yeah, if you actually look at Yes Express, we've got 45 locations around North America, 5 of them in the country of Mexico, and locations from California all the way across. We deal with a lot of different political environments. We deal with a lot of different type of work ethics that you have in different areas. We deal with very low tech and very high tech. What we find here in Chattanooga, we've got a good blend of all of it, but actually have the ability to attract good, solid employees with good skills. And the work ethic is very good. We don't find that in other parts of the country, and in some cases, work ethic in Mexico is actually better than it is here, or in parts of the United States. But Tennessee is a great area to hire employees. We've got pretty decent education, but at the same time, the job skills and the willingness to work is very good.
Right.
Well, it is a key, and I think we were all very proud about Volkswagen. Wade mentioned that where he was, and I think there was some fear in the community about, we've never built a car here. How's this going to turn out? And I think it was that we keep saying this can do, and maybe the chamber should brand that, Jed. That's a good idea. But I think that really is a common thread throughout Chattanooga. And Max, also, I'm fascinated. I think most people around town, they think of trucks and transportation as being kind of old school, you know, just really heavy technology or, you know, heavy industry, old school things. And yet you have really stayed hard on the leading edge in so many ways. And then you discovered along the way that there was a credit card problem or credit issue, and you're now about solving that. I'd love for you to talk just a minute about that, if you would.
We have a company that's called TransCard that we started here in Chattanooga, and it really started as a way for us to give our truck drivers payroll anywhere they were at in the nation. It became a fuel advance card to where if they needed cash, they could get it. They could get fuel at any truck stop across the nation. And that's how it started. And then we got to talking to MasterCard and talking to some of the people that left the company, and we had people call and say, can you do this for us? So we created a new company called TransCard, and today TransCard has over 300 banks under long-term contracts. It's got MGM, Caesars, and several what we call hospitality players, where they use our card especially for their high dollar clients. Banks are doing it for gift and doing it for payroll. People have a lot of people around the country. Instead of sending checks, it's a lot cheaper to give them a card and send their payroll on the card. So we're being very highly successful with that. We're also launching an insurance card that will get the money in your hands a lot faster than insurance companies sending you a check. So it's pretty neat. But one important thing, we're one of 10 MasterCard processors. We're the smallest, but we are the fastest. Part of the reason we're the fastest is we're located in Chattanooga. Our computer centers are actually at the electric power board inside their systems where their 1 gig internet comes in. And we're beating the big companies with the sub-second response by almost 3 to 4 times what they're doing. They're going back to those larger companies and say, well, how can you not do it when the small companies already do it?
Wow, what a great story. Would you tell it again? No, just kidding. There's so many aspects of that are unique to Chattanooga, and you are our sort of poster serial entrepreneur and finding problems and finding solutions to them, and I love hearing it. And then when you add to it some of the things that make Chattanooga unique, it really is exciting, and we love telling your stories for you behind your back, by the way.
That's okay.
I hope you don't mind. Tiffany, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, you have some folks who work for you who are actually out recruiting and bringing young people to Chattanooga, even though we might not yet have a job for them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a big turnaround, as several of you have mentioned. I got here in the late 80s, and I was working for a company where we were trying to recruit people, and it was a real problem to get people to move their families here when there was one restaurant south of the river that you would go to on Friday night. And then that turned over. And in the last few years, we have people who come here on vacation and say, I'm moving here, find me a job later. So kind of tell us a little bit about what you're doing related to recruitment.
Yeah, sure. So we know that whenever someone moves here for an opportunity, one of the biggest hurdles that they have in getting plugged into the community is just that, getting plugged into the community. So whenever we recruit someone to be a part of the community here, we actually provide them with housing. So we have a set of apartments that are off of 6th Street here in downtown. It's actually right in the middle of downtown, completely in walking distance of almost everything that you can imagine. And we provide them with housing for up to a year. So we're providing them with a stipend toward that housing, which makes their rent about $400. So we're providing them with not only a place to live, but we're also surrounding them with people that are their age. We are, just so you know, we are pretty focused on millennials. We are looking for people with certain skill sets, but a lot of those skill sets fall into the millennial generation. And so whenever we bring them here, we're giving them housing, giving them a stipend, and then putting them around people that are their age, as well as interested in a lot of the same things that they're interested in. So what we're experimenting with is how does having this housing component, where you're providing it readily available to people, create more synergy for those people to stay here and again to plant roots here. So rather than just creating this culture of recruiting, placing in a job, and then, hey, we kind of don't care what happens after hours for you, we're actually doing the opposite. We're actually helping them create a lifestyle here. Because one of the biggest things that Chattanooga has going for it is this amazing lifestyle with recreation. There's a great opportunity for work-life balance here. It's absolutely gorgeous. There's an opportunity to have as many hobbies as you'd like here and really dig deep into them because they're affordable and because there are people around you that have similar passions. And so we're actually proving what it's like to build a community around that when it comes to recruitment.
Great. We wish you well with that.
Thanks.
I wish you'd quit stealing my employees to come do that for you, but I'm just kidding. You know, so the Chattanooga history, if you think about it, is around logistics, as I mentioned, certainly a great, robust history here with healthcare and manufacturing, the dynamo of Dixie that we've all talked about. And those are threads that continue in very strong ways in our current economy. I think, though, that the big surprise to a lot of people has been this development around the gig and technology and electronic transmission of information. And, you know, it started in a very interesting way, and we're so proud that We were the first city in America to have a gigabit to every home and every business in the community. And there were a lot of people at that time who said, this isn't going to last very long. This advantage that we have of being gig city, we better get ahead of it because it's going to evaporate and other cities will follow right behind. Well, other cities are following behind, but I think we're all kind of surprised at how long it has lasted. And I think some of the great work that's been done in the community to brand it and to make people associate Chattanooga with it is a huge part of our future. And I wonder if any of you just wanted to chime in on that and talk a little bit about what you think the future of the gig is and Chattanooga's role in it.
You mind?
Yes, sir.
It is true. There are other cities around the country now that are developing their own gig networks. And you might go, oh, well, that means the door's closing on Chattanooga. But actually what it means from a very important perspective is that it's actually the very beginning of things. Because before, you had to say, well, we've got a gig, and people elsewhere would go, well, who cares, right? What does that matter? And now you see that it does matter. This is happening. It's happening that cities around the country, and it's led by Google in large part, building gigabit cities. And now we're not going to be the only city in the country, like the analogy people make is the only house on the block with a telephone. Yeah, you got nobody to talk to, right? And there's no extraordinary economic value that permeates throughout the country and that allows you to do like Max did and attract business from all over. Come here and experiment, but you're running a kind of like a real risk because you don't know, are other people really going to do this or not? And now that they are, and I mean it's a long process, now that they are, we are in a position where we can say, look, this is happening in your community. It's happening across the country. Come here now and experiment. So this door is now, just now, right now, opening up.
Well, it's exciting to me. It's also a little bit confusing to me. I go to meetings where people are talking a language I've never heard before. And I have gotten to where I can at least program my own devices and don't have to hand them to a teenager. But I think Chattanooga's role in that is surprising to a lot of people. And Tom, I know you were talking about having Skype and video sessions with Tel Aviv and how the connectivity is important.
Right. I mean, this is hugely important for us, and we're going to leverage the heck out of this thing, and we already have. So the bottom line is when you come to Erlanger with a stroke, we don't just do plain CAT scans of your brain, which is about 20 pictures. We get just short of 3,000 pictures of your brain from here to here. We look at all of the arteries in the front, in the back, in your neck, in your head. We can see exactly what area of the brain is dead, what area of the brain is still reversible. My dad died from a stroke 3 years ago. He had a stroke. He woke up with a stroke. Well, when he woke up with a stroke, you don't know if the stroke happened 5 minutes after he fell asleep or 5 minutes before he woke up, okay? And our imaging tells us what's potentially fixable. So we're getting away from these artificial timelines of treating people based on, well, we have to treat them in 8 hours or 3 hours or 4.5 hours. We actually have a tremendous amount of data in our hands to tell us what is fixable and what's still reversible. The problem now is we got a gigantic amount of data on our hands now, and we got a whole huge team of brain specialists to look at that data. Well, guess what? I mean, strokes are coming in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. While we have a brain neurologist there, the radiologists often are all over the place. So with the high-speed data that they have coming to their house now, our interventional guys can look at brain imaging. And there's not a week that goes by that I'm not talking to Dr. Baxter or one of his colleagues, our radiologist, and they're looking at all of this imaging at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're figuring out whether or not those guys need to come in and we need to save this patient's life. There's still an opportunity. So that's one example. Two, we cover an area of 50,000 square miles. We've got people flying in on helicopters from 50,000 square miles. Well, guess what? You know, it would be very nice when they get here if we didn't have to wait and talk to family and see the family and have that conversation. We'd like to start that before the patient gets to the hospital. So we have a grant out to put telemedicine on the ambulances so we can see the patients, talk to family as the patients are coming in. And what allows us to do that sort of technology? Well, because we have high-speed wireless in our region as well, we can leverage off of that and actually get information sent into us. And not only are we talking about looking at patients, we're talking about actually putting CAT scanners on the ambulances, doing all the imaging even before the patient gets here. Because it all goes back to that 1.9 million brain cells that die every minute. So if you can shave off 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, that may be the difference of life and death. So there's just tremendous opportunities to leverage our gig technology here from a medical standpoint.
I got another business idea for you. I think if you could do a brain scan of Max and tell us what he's thinking about next, we could all know what to invest in. So, he's certainly advice, I think. Anyway, at this point, we've got about 5 minutes or so left, and I wanted to see, given some of the topics that we've talked about today, if there was anyone in the audience that had a question that you wanted to ask of any of our presenters today. And I'll just try to do it democratically and look for hands. But yes, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. So there was a study that came out about 2 years ago that said by 2016, 60% of millennials will be completely mobile workers. So what we're trying to capitalize on is the fact that the millennial generation is used to mobile work, and the fact that they can work for anyone but from Chattanooga. So that's why we're mostly focused on the millennial generation, because their ability to be completely mobile, live anywhere, and they go after a top-notch lifestyle. Above all else, that's what they go after.
And that brings some interesting community ideas around transportation. We're finding that young people care less about cars and more about bikes and mass transit, and so we need to prepare for that, and that solves some problems that we've had here with topography and transportation.
Definitely. And from an economic development standpoint, if you have someone who's making $100,000 a year from another company, but they're living here, they're pouring that money back into this community. So we recognize that as an opportunity as well. Millennials also focus on giving back to their community, being very hands-on and diving into how can they make a change in their community. So we highly value that aspect of this generation of talent.
And another thing I'll say from the chair I'm sitting in at the chamber, we've noticed a huge interest in the Young Professionals Association that's a part of our chamber, and we have, Jed, 250 or so showing up for those meetings once a month. And it's exactly what Tiffany said. They have a greater interest in participating in civic discussions and in business groups than any group that we've seen in several generations. And that's exciting for the future too. Any other questions from the audience?
There's some new brake technology that they're working on to be able to put that energy back into moving the truck. The next 10 years, we're in an area where we're going to redefine our industry tremendously. And part of it's aerodynamics, and part of it is how we use energy, period.
Yeah, absolutely. So the answer is absolutely. So again, we're getting plugged back into the gig here. So a couple key developments here that are going on right now. Within about a month, Erlanger is going to have the technology where when an EMS member or a paramedic is taking care of a patient in the field, okay, they're in someone's house, they've just had a stroke. They're going to type into a laptop the key information that we need, their medicines, the time of onset, what their symptoms are. That goes directly to our cell phone, and we're going to be alerted even before the patient comes in. That helps us tremendously. Secondly, this all goes back to the 1.9 million brain cells that are dying every minute. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity to intervene on the patients before they get here that could stop or really mitigate the whole stroke process. So there's a number of companies that are developing drugs. Magnesium is one of the things that's been studied pre-hospital. Cooling the patient that's having the stroke appears to be the most beneficial pre-hospital treatment that can be done. We're working with Zoll very carefully. There is many other devices that could absolutely be implemented in the patient's home, and particularly in the ambulance or in the helicopter as the patient's traveling. Keep in mind, a lot of these people are traveling for an hour to an hour and a half here, okay, where they may be at an outside hospital that's being sent here by ambulance. So I think that we know that there's a lot of biologic drugs that can be beneficial pre-hospital. There's a lot of devices that can be done pre-hospital. And so we're pushing the treatment out to the pre-hospital side, definitely, and it's all going to be facilitated by having rapid communication like this over the gig and having imaging like CAT scanners on ambulances. And there's really not a better city than Chattanooga to do that, because we've got about the largest network of EMS plugged in. We're covering 50,000 square miles, and we've got all the technology to do it. So it's companies are just ripe to work with us, just exactly in that regard.
Well, thank you for those questions. We are at the limit of what was scheduled for this today, but I just wanted to end by saying this turned out even better than I had hoped in terms of our ability to show you with excitement what's going on in Chattanooga. We are also working on a 16-county, 40-year planning project to try to make sure that we don't miss something obvious for the future. And this conference and the ability for communities across this region to connect with each other is extremely important as we're looking out into the future. And for too many years, we feel like we've been constrained by the state lines of Georgia and Alabama, and it's been a hindrance to Chattanooga to be that close on these political boundaries. Many of you may know I was raised in Bristol, where the Virginia and Tennessee border was a hindrance to that community's ability to get together and make things happen. So I think this idea of regional cooperation and our working together, been some great examples today of how we can do that, and yet we're still really proud of Chattanooga, and I hope you put up with it. So thank you very much, and please thank the panel for their participation.